Saturday. Hello, everybody. Talk 920. I am your host, Mike. He did tell me before he wasn't going to make it on here. I forgot this. Got a lot of starting to get them. It only seemed like a couple. But now football week, the past day, next week Saturday if you count the Hall of Fame ceremony. So it would be our lives now until early February. So that's good. Good and bad the summer months. But anyway. You have that with the past Brett Favre getting into the Hall of Fame. I went to 10 Brett Favre moments blog. You can check out our blog, and that's at in kind of in honor of this weekend's Hall of Fame in Favre. That and Chris Buescher comes in recent memory. He takes the checkered flag in the Pennsylvania 400 at Pocono. And people reaction and underreaction too. I did read a little bit about that, and I'll share how that panned out as well. Brewers got into the deadline. Jonathan gone, no longer Brewer, now Texas Ranger. Much about that, and now at the during their there. So we'll talk more about that. If you want to, feel free to be a part of the show. You can with us here in the chat. Skype. I'm not sure how this works, so it is a something that I guess I'm gonna have to kind of learn here. But Skype at me, and that's at Sports Talk 920 on Skype. So you can try that out if you want to be a part of the show and give your input what's going on in the latest in the world of sports. Of course, we do have the Olympics that are just starting now. So, if you want to talk about that, I'm maybe not going to dive into too much of the Olympics unless there's something that goes on, in the next couple, weeks or whatever the Olympics is. I can't remember how long it is. If you want to, but first off, I do want to hit off on the Chris Buescher win. I'm actually watching a replay of it now. I didn't get to see a lot of the race on Monday because it was a rain-shortened race, a race that was delayed on Monday, and it was kind of I think it kind of played out fairly for weather delay race. Maybe it looked like a race that Joey Logano, he made the right move at one of the rain delay cautions and passing Kyle Larson and Austin Dillon, who probably had the two fastest cars out there all day. And we were hoping that all the strategy and what would play out the right way for them, and one of those two would be able to get their first win. But unfortunately, for that first caution, they both kind of screwed up. Joey Logano got to pull off the lead and looked like maybe he would be in the third seat. And then basically, green flag pit stops happened right around lap, I believe it was 108 or something like that. The race was held down to 102 laps. They did run a lot of laps under caution. Basically, they were going through green flag pit stops, and Chris Buescher and Regan Smith were two cars that stayed on the track. And then both of those guys getting the top five, something that those teams definitely needed. And then Chris Buescher, again, picking up his first career NASCAR Sprint Cup win. And, I was just happy to see someone win. We could talk about the legitimacy of these rain shortened fuel mileage strategy type-esque races, but, Joey Logano, he's got one win in the bank. When he won his I think it was at Pocono too, or maybe it was New Hampshire. I can't remember which one it came at first. I think a lot of people thought the same thing. It was maybe a cheap win, and he would win a whole heck of a lot. And now you look at him, and due time, one got in the right, worked out for him. He's one of the top drivers on the circuit. We've seen other guys. David Rudiman, he's won a few races. His first one came in a rain-shortened race at Chicagoland, but it still kind of opened some other victories that he had that were legit. I think he won a couple races at like Texas, and I can't remember, but they got two or three wins too in his career. Maybe not the success story that Buescher wants to hear. Jeff Burton, again, he was the guy in Darlington who I believe it wasn't his first career win. I take that back. His first career win came at Texas, but one win that he got was at I think it was one of his earlier wins in his career was at Darlington when he smoked the wall, getting I believe Ernie Irvin's oil at the time, and the rain came out. He ended up winning the race, but if that race would have stayed green, or if that race would have went on even 5 more laps, Justin would have had to go behind the wall, and he probably would have ended up 30th position. So a lot of times luck does play into it. Eric Almirola, there was another one that's happened recently, 2014 Coke Zero 400. So I mean, a lot of luck had to play out and for Chris to get the win, and but it's exciting to see someone different win. We're talking about how, especially early on, lately we can maybe talk about the racing not being that exciting right now. A lot of that I think has to do with the tracks they're racing on too. Like Pocono, even New Hampshire don't really provide us the flat tracks. They don't provide a lot of the best side by side racing, but the racing this year overall, I mean, as a whole, looking at 2016 season, as we said before, I think has been some of the best in recent memory. And now it's not. I'm not saying it's already good, but back in those first 5 races of the year, needless to say, who was winning those races? Damn, they were fun races to watch. Pretty exciting finishes. I think any race fan can appreciate a side, just beating the guy out by a bumper finishes, and I think that's what we saw a lot of early in the season. Kind of since the Coke 600 has been a little bit different, but I guess anyway, using the same guys that are going into victory lane every week. It's going to be Kyle Busch, Brad Keselowski, Jimmy Johnson, a lot of these guys with multiple, Kevin Harvick. You're seeing the same guys in victory lane every week, and it kind of gets bland after a while. When maybe you can get some of these young guys. It probably would have been a little bit more exciting to see these young guys that are at the brink. Kind of especially this year, right around that chase cutoff line with Austin Dillon and Kyle Larson. They're sitting there, trying to get their first win. They've come close several times before, and they're getting there. They're getting there. And I'm actually watching a replay with when those two guys got together, and Troy Logano took the lead. But it was kind of cool to see that throughout, both they're battling for the lead, against the 42 car too. That's seen some success with Kyle Petty, many years ago. But anyway, you're not seeing those guys that maybe are on the brink that we're wanting to see win, or like a Chase Elliott too that albeit in his rookie season, we haven't seen him break through the victory lane. Because that when I said Rudy, it was kind of cool to see Chris Buescher win. He said, "Oh, that's stupid. Squid's winning the race. Squid won the race." And Rudy's been on our program here, and speaking of just the same guys winning every week, and then once you finally get Rudy, you start knocking on it, and sometimes you can't knock how parity happens. A team with like Rome Motorsports, a team that really could use the money, and Regan Smith, those cars can use the funding because they're running on a shoestring budget. So sometimes these guys, sometimes lower budget teams, sometimes these higher teams get guys with I would say for my purposes, or what being Rudy calls kids, they're in those cars. But a lot of times too nowadays, I think Chris Buescher is a great example. Regan Smith, he's I think kind of borderline on that on that same argument that these guys aren't squids; they're just in poor equipment right now. Guys like Alex Bauman, who I think coming up through the ranks had a lot of promise. With BK Racing, he was with Tommy Baldwin Racing, and basically he's out of the sport now. Parker Klingerman was another one. James Buescher, Chris Buescher's brother, is another example too. A guy that's won a championship in the Truck Series and can't find a ride right now, permanent full-time ride. And then you see Danica Patrick, in one of the championship equipment running with these guys every week. But with that being said, it's funny listening to NASCAR radio, and they're talking about, excuse me, how Chris Buescher needs to go down, which next year go over Greg Biffle's ride or add a fourth team, what have you. And and one swing of the bat, yes, he probably that's probably the plan in place if he won this race on Monday or not. But people are talking about like, well, maybe if Bill Jr. doesn't come back from his concussion. Maybe Chris Buescher is someone that Rick Hendrick will want to nab up and take to ride the 80 in the future. Which with that too, you got to remember he did this race by basically pure luck. I mean, yeah, you also got to say, well, yeah, you got to be in position, put yourself in these right positions to be up front during those times to take advantage of them. But yeah, I mean, this is also a team that with that win is not even in the top 30 in points. So he's still got way, and he's only points out now. He's got to race his way into the top 30 if he wants to make the chase. Which, that brings up a lot of mixed feelings too. If you listen to the program, long-time listener, you know how I feel about this. There's two things. I think there's the really good, or there's a little bit of good, and I think there's just a lot of bad. For one, a guy that basically before these past 2 weeks he's finished first or first respectively at Pocono. I believe his best finish was right around maybe finishing barely into the top 25. A team that's been struggling to even being in the top 30, which shouldn't be that hard to make those requirements to make the chase if you win, unless you are a part-time driver or whatever, or maybe you get the injury waiver that you're out for an extended period of time. Not that Kyle proved it. Tony Stewart proved it this year, and this year you're going to have potentially two drivers that are going to be outside the top 20 that are getting to the championship. I think Stewart maybe could run enough to compete for the championship, but he's also missed a bunch of races too, so there's that. Buescher's been in every race, hasn't that competitive of a team, and could potentially just waste a champion bid for a team like Kyle Larson, maybe Chase Elliott, Jamie McMurray, Casey Kane, some of these guys that have competed every week that can potentially run in the top 10 week in and week out if nothing goes wrong. And and it almost seems like you start seeing a little bit more of the concern ever since this past week when Chris won. But that should never have been an issue, or that should have always been thought about, because the year before that this new chase format came out with, that same team, Front Row Motorsports, won at Talladega with David Reagan. So you had to think, well, top 30, is that going to be good enough for a guy to compete with championship? Eric Almirola, maybe we could argue with him back in 2014. He was top 25, but it wasn't that competitive. It wasn't a big surprise. AJ Allmendinger, another one, wasn't that big of a surprise that they were the first ones out of the championship right away. And you can maybe see Dale Earnhardt. You could take Dale Earnhardt Jr. out of the way, but I don't know if he's going to race in the top 15 if he does come back. But basically, anyway, you look at what's going on too with the Chris Buescher situation here too. I think there is a positive note on that too. That yes, you're wasting a spot for one of the guys that can maybe either compete or maybe advance a little bit farther in the championship and set themselves up better. This is a team. We talk about, it's hard for a team to come out with Front Row Motorsports, Tommy Baldwin Racing, BK Racing. They basically started off as start and park teams for the most part, and sometimes they've showed flashes that they can compete, and a lot of times, like Tommy Baldwin Racing, had to scale back from a 2-car to a 1-car operation, and barely can stand the lead lap for more than 20 laps. Front Row Motorsports maybe a little bit more of a success story now with their 2 wins. But now that they qualify for the chase, they'd be the lowest they could finish if they do get in that top 30 will be 16th in the points, and that's a lot bigger check for them. That could either get a lot more support from Roush Fenway Racing, which it might not mean as much as it used to, but I think for a team like Front Row Motorsports, that would be quite huge. If that's a team that maybe once Chris Buescher leaves, if maybe they switch with Greg Biffle and Greg Biffle goes that Front Row Motorsports team, that can maybe contend for a win here and there, or maybe get some young Ford driver in it, or maybe keep Chris Buescher in it and kind of make it like what Furniture Racing is. It kind of started out in that same spot too. Started off getting the start and park team, I think with Kenny Wallace several years ago, and then eventually getting Kurt Busch, who didn't win race but qualified for the chase. And then also you get Truex Jr. And then I think it kind of slowly, progressively gets to the point not where they are now, where they're basically an extension branch off of Joe Gibbs Racing. So a lot of good things can come of it too. Where as much as I hate the chase, this could help the little guys per se